They saw a woman past her prime, assigned to babysit a machine. Master Sergeant Anya Petrova did nothing to correct the assumption. Her silence was a fortress, her movements a study in economy. In the sterile, high-tech hangar that housed the XF-91 Wraith, she was an analog ghost in a digital world. Her hands, worn but steady, moved over the hypersonic aircraft's composite skin with a familiarity that bordered on reverence. She did not need the diagnostic tablets the younger technicians consulted like sacred texts. She listened to the hum of the dormant turbine, the subtle sighs of the hydraulic lines, the faint electrical whisper of the avionics suite. The Wraith spoke a language only she seemed to understand. Lieutenant Commander Alex Ryder, call sign Viper, saw none of this. He saw a graying woman in her late 40s whose presence in his elite experimental flight program was a bureaucratic mystery. He was the tip of the spear, the golden boy who had shattered every record in the simulator. He was young, gifted, and burnished with the invulnerable shine of arrogance. To him, Petrova was part of the background, a fixture like the fuel lines and the tool chests. A relic. Sergeant, he called out one morning, his voice echoing with casual command as he strode toward the cockpit ladder. Is she ready to fly, or are you still tucking her in for the night? His co-pilot, a younger lieutenant, snickered. The ground crew shuffled their feet, avoiding Ryder's eyes and, more pointedly, Petrova's. Anya finished wiping a trace of hydraulic fluid from a seam near the engine intake. She straightened up slowly, her back stiff. Her eyes, the color of a winter sky, met his for a fraction of a second. There was no anger in them, no challenge. There was nothing at all, and that void was more unnerving than any retort. She's ready, sir, she said. Her voice was low and even, a tool sharpened by use, not emotion. Ryder felt a flicker of annoyance. He wanted a reaction, a spark of defiance, or at least the grudging respect his rank demanded. He got neither. He just got compliance. It felt like being dismissed. Good. He clipped, turning to climb into the cockpit. Try to keep up with the checklist today. We don't want any surprises because Grandma forgot to cross a T. The insult hung in the air, thick and unpleasant. A young airman named Evans, who often worked near Petrova, flinched. He had watched her for weeks. He saw how she would arrive before dawn and leave long after the last officer was gone. He saw how she would run her bare hands over the leading edge of the wings after a flight, as if checking for a fever. He had once seen her place her palm flat against the cockpit glass and close her eyes, standing perfectly still for a full minute. He thought she was praying. Anya gave no sign she had heard Ryder's last comment. She simply picked up her toolkit and moved toward the tail assembly. Her focus already shifted to the vectoring thrusters. Ryder, settling into his command seat, felt a renewed spike of irritation. It was like shouting at a mountain. The mountain did not care. He keyed his comms. Power, this is Viper 1. Ready for pre-flight systems check. He pushed her from his mind. She was just a mechanic. He was the pilot. That was the natural order of things. Colonel Marcus Thorne watched the exchange from the observation deck, overlooking the hangar. He was a man who believed in order, in regulations, in the clear and unambiguous lines of authority. Petrova's file had landed on his desk 3 months ago with a single, cryptic instruction from the highest levels of the Air Command, assigned to XF-91 program. Ground Crew Chief. She is to be given unrestricted access to the aircraft. Do not question her methods. Thorne prided himself on knowing his people, on understanding the intricate machinery of his command. Petrova was a gear that did not fit. Her service record was a patchwork of redactions, long stretches of unrecorded time, followed by commendations for mundane maintenance work. It made no sense. A master sergeant with her apparent age should have a record as thick as a novel. Hers was a pamphlet with most of the pages torn out. He'd privately decided she was someone's political baggage, a problem pawned off on his high-stakes program until she could be quietly retired. Ryder's casual cruelty bothered him, but the chain of command was sacrosanct. An officer's authority over an enlisted soldier was absolute, even if that officer was an arrogant boy and the soldier was an enigma. Days turned into weeks. Ryder flew the Wraith with breathtaking skill, pushing the experimental craft to the edge of its performance envelope. Each successful flight fed his ego. He saw the aircraft as an extension of his own will, a testament to his innate talent. He barely registered Petrova's presence anymore, other than as the silent figure who signed off on the flight clearance forms. But the others on the ground saw more. During his simulation, a critical sensor on the port wing began feeding back ghost data, a phantom stall warning that would have triggered a catastrophic automated response in a real flight. The engineering team spent 3 hours running diagnostics, tracing schematics, getting nowhere. Petrova walked over, looked at the flickering monitor for a moment, and then went to the aircraft. She didn't open a single access panel. She ran her hand along a specific conduit channel near the wing root, her brow furrowed in concentration. "It's the wiring harness," she said, her voice barely audible. "The vibration frequency at Mach 3 is causing a sympathetic resonance in the fifth data line. The shielding is inadequate." The lead engineer, a man with 2 PhDs, stared at her. "That's impossible. The specs on that shielding are rated for twice the resonant frequency." "The specs are wrong," Anya said, not unkindly. "Check the harmonic signature from Viper's last run. You'll see it." She walked away. An hour later, a flustered engineer confirmed it. The shielding was, for a reason no one could explain, failing at a specific hypersonic frequency. They replaced the harness. The problem vanished. Ryder was told it was a minor sensor glitch that had been resolved. Another time, Airman Evans was performing a routine check on the landing gear. He was about to sign off when Petrova stopped beside him. She knelt, her gaze fixed on the main hydraulic actuator. "Look again," she said softly. Evans looked. He saw nothing. "It's green across the board, Master Sergeant. Pressure is nominal." "Feel it," she instructed. She placed her fingers on the polished metal cylinder. He hesitantly did the same. "There," she whispered. "Under the hum. Do you feel it?" A little stutter. Very fast. He concentrated, trying to filter out the noise of the hangar. And then he felt it. A microscopic, high-frequency tremor in the metal, almost imperceptible. It wasn't a vibration. It was a flaw. A tiny, rhythmic imperfection. "What is it?" he breathed. "A microfracture in the primary piston seal," she said. "On the next high-G landing, it will fail. The gear will collapse." She stood up, grabbed a wrench, and began the long process of dismantling the actuator herself. Standard diagnostics had missed it completely. When they finally got the piston out, the fracture was visible only under a microscope. Ryder was never told how close he'd come to a fiery, runway-shredding disaster. He just saw a delay in the flight schedule, for which he loudly blamed the slow-moving ground crew. The whispers about Petrova began to change. The ground crew started calling her the Oracle. They brought her their problems, their strange readings, their gut feelings that something was wrong. She would listen patiently, her quiet gaze making them feel as if they were the only person in the world. Then she would find the answer. She never used her knowledge to grandstand. She never said, "I told you so." She simply fixed what was broken and moved on. Her competence was so profound, so unassuming, it was almost unnerving. It was a force of nature like gravity or time. It just was. The day of the record attempt arrived clear and cold. The mission was to take the Wraith to its maximum classified altitude and then perform a hypersonic dive, testing the thermal resistance of the hull and the stability of the flight controls at speeds that would tear a normal jet apart. It was the program's crowning achievement, the final exam for both pilot and machine. Ryder was electric with anticipation, a predator poised to strike. As he walked to the aircraft, he saw Petrova making one last check of the engine cowling. On her wrist, just below the cuff of her coveralls, he saw a faded tattoo. It looked like a bird of some kind, small and dark against her pale skin. An osprey, maybe. For a moment, he felt a strange, inexplicable pang of something. He dismissed it. "Don't scratch the paint, Sergeant," he said, his voice tight with adrenaline. "She needs to look good for the cameras when I get back." Anya looked up from the engine. For the first time, her eyes held his for more than a second. He saw a flicker of something deep in their gray depths. It wasn't anger. It looked like concern. Not for him, but for the machine he was about to command. "Bring her home safe, sir," she said. The words were standard, but her tone was a plea. He laughed it off. "That's my job." He climbed into the cockpit, the world shrinking to the reassuring glow of his instruments. The Wraith was his. The ascent was flawless. The Wraith climbed like a homesick angel, silent and swift, leaving the thick atmosphere behind. At the apex of the flight, in the thin, cold air at the edge of space, Ryder felt like a god. Beginning the dive, he reported, his voice calm and steady. "He knows the aircraft over." The descent started perfectly. Speed built, numbers on the HUD climbing at a dizzying rate. Mach 3, Mach 4. The sky outside the canopy turned from black to a deep, incandescent violet. The airframe began to glow, a dull cherry red. Everything was nominal. Then hell broke loose. A single warning light flashed on his main console, a coolant pressure drop in the primary avionics core. Before he could even process it, it was joined by a dozen more. A cascade failure. Alarms shrieked, a symphony of electronic panic. The control stick went dead in his hand, then kicked back with the force of a mule. The HUD dissolved into a storm of static. He was blind, fighting a machine that was actively trying to kill him. "Mayday, mayday, mayday," he yelled, his voice cracking. "Viper 1 is out of control. Multiple system failures. I've lost the board." In the control room, chaos erupted. Engineers shouted conflicting data at each other. Screens filled with nonsensical error codes. The Wraith's telemetry feed was a dying scream. Colonel Thorne stood frozen, his face a mask of horror, watching the altitude reading plummet. They were going to lose the pilot. They were going to lose their billion-dollar prototype. Through the pandemonium, a single figure moved with purpose. Anya Petrova strode to the main communications console, pulling a headset from a frantic technician's grasp. She pushed him aside, not with violence, but with an irresistible certainty. She flicked a switch, isolating her channel. Her voice cut through the static into Ryder's helmet, impossibly calm. "Viper 1, this is Petrova. Acknowledge." Ryder, wrestling with the bucking aircraft, barely registered the name. "I'm busy here, Sergeant," he snarled, sweat stinging his eyes. "Stop fighting her," Anya said, her voice a low, steady anchor in the storm. "You're making it worse. The feedback loop is tearing the control surfaces apart. Let go of the stick." "Let go?" "I'll go into an unrecoverable flat spin." "You are already in one," she replied, her tone unyielding. "Let go." Desperate, out of options, Ryder forced his white-knuckled hands open. The stick stopped bucking. The violent shuddering of the airframe lessened, settling into a terrifying, gut-wrenching spiral. "Better," Anya's voice said in his ear. "Now listen to me. Your avionics core is overheating. The automated diagnostics are lying to you. Look at the manual circuit breaker panel to your lower right. Panel Gamma 7. Tell me what you see." Ryder's eyes darted down. They're all tripped. Everything is red. "I know. The system initiated a full shutdown to prevent a core breach. It's trying to save itself, not you. Now, you're going to do something that isn't in any manual. You see breaker C12 labeled Auxiliary Power Unit Coolant Pump? Yes. Pull it. Pull it. That's the emergency backup. If I pull that." "The APU is already fried," she interrupted, her voice sharp as glass. "Its pump is drawing ghost power from the primary bus. It's what started the cascade. Pull the breaker." Now, Lieutenant. The use of his rank was a slap. With a trembling hand, Ryder reached down and pulled the breaker. For a heart-stopping second, nothing happened. Then, one by one, a few of the warning lights on his main board blinked out. A section of the HUD flickered back to life, displaying garbled but recognizable data. "Good," Anya said. "Now, you have about 90 seconds of control before the core overheats again. You need to manually reroute the environmental coolant. There's a valve handle behind your left seat. It's painted yellow. You will not find it on any schematic. It's a field modification." Ryder twisted, his suit fighting him. His fingers fumbled behind the seat, searching. They brushed against cold, painted metal. A handle. He gripped it. I have it. Turn it 180 degrees clockwise. It will be stiff. He threw all his strength into it. The handle resisted, then turned with a heavy, groaning clunk. A new sound filled the cockpit, a low, powerful hum. The temperature warning light on the avionics panel switched from red to amber. The HUD cleared completely. He had control. He was still falling, but he had control. She stabilized. Anya said, her voice softer now. The ride will be rough. The main stabilizers are gone. Use the vertical thrusters to manage your descent. Gently. Don't force her. For the next 10 minutes, she talked him down from the sky. She guided his hands, his feet, his pilot's instincts. She wasn't reading from checklist. She was inside the machine with him, anticipating its groans, interpreting its shudders. She knew the Wraith not as a collection of parts, but as a single, wounded being. She was telling him how to soothe it, how to coax it home. When the runway lights of the base finally appeared through the clouds, Ryder was drenched in sweat, his body trembling with exhaustion and adrenaline. He brought the crippled bird down, the landing a jarring, ugly affair, but he was on the ground. He was alive. As the emergency crews swarmed the aircraft, he killed the engines and sat in the sudden, ringing silence. His mind replayed the last 15 minutes. The voice in his ear, calm, certain, omniscient, Petrova. He unstrapped himself and climbed shakily down the ladder. He saw her immediately. She wasn't with the cheering engineers in the control room. She was walking slowly toward the wounded Wraith, her gaze fixed on the scorch marks and torn metal. Her face held an expression of profound sadness, like a mother seeing her child injured. She didn't even look at him. Colonel Thorne met him on the tarmac, his face pale. Ryder, my office. Now, the entire base was buzzing, looking at the pilot who had survived the unsurvivable. But Ryder only had eyes for the quiet woman, ignoring him to go commune with her machine. In Thorne's office, the air was thick with unspoken questions. The colonel looked at Ryder, then at the thick file on his desk. He said nothing for a long time. Finally, he pushed the file across the polished wood. I think you need to see this, he said, his voice hoarse. I had to pull this from the archives. It took a flag officer's authorization. Ryder opened the folder. The first page was a standard personnel form, but most of it was covered in thick black lines of redaction. Name, Anya Petrova. Rank, Master Sergeant, provisional demotion from redacted. Current assignment, XF-91 program, ground crew chief. He turned the page. It was a single sheet, a summary of a program so classified he had only heard rumors of it. Program name, Project Osprey, prototype development for XF-91 Wraith. Subject role, chief design consultant and primary test pilot. Ryder's blood ran cold. He read the line again. Test pilot. He scanned down the page. Logged flight hours, prototype 2,478. Exceeds combined hours of all current program pilots by 400%. Specializations, advanced avionics engineering, catastrophic failure analysis, deep cover infiltration, redacted. Call sign Vodnik. The water spirit. He remembered the faded osprey tattoo on her wrist. A bird that dives. His mind reeled. The field modification she'd told him about. The yellow handle. It wasn't on the schematics, because she was the one who had put it there. The vibration in the wiring harness, the microfracture in the landing gear. She hadn't been guessing. She had been remembering. She knew the machine's every secret because she had helped give it life. He looked at the final entry on the page. A psychological evaluation summary. Reason for reassignment, operational burnout. Post-traumatic stress following the loss of her wingman, call sign Ghost, during a redacted test flight failure. Subject requested voluntary demotion and assignment to a non-combat, non-flight role. Recommended for ground-level reintegration to maintain proximity to familiar systems as a therapeutic measure. Subject exhibits extreme protective attachment to the technology she helped create. Ryder closed the file. His hands were shaking. The memory of his own words struck him with the force of a physical blow. Grandma Try to keep up. Don't scratch the paint. He had been mocking a living legend. He had been sneering at the very woman who had designed, flown, and bled for the aircraft he considered his own. He had treated the master architect like a janitor. He stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. He walked out of the colonel's office in a daze. He had to find her. He had to what? Apologize? The word felt laughably small, an insult in itself. He found her in the hangar. The emergency crews were gone. It was just her and the broken wraith, bathed in the cold fluorescent lights. She had a clean cloth in her hand and was gently wiping soot from the edge of the cockpit, just below the spot where his name was stenciled. Her touch was tender, a caress. Grease smudged one of her cheeks, a dark streak on her pale skin. He stopped 20 feet away, frozen. What could he say? What words could possibly bridge the chasm of his own ignorance and arrogance? He saw Airman Evans nearby, quietly organizing a tool rack, but the young man's eyes were on the scene, full of a deep, knowing respect. Anya didn't turn around. She seemed to sense him there, but she gave no sign. She finished wiping the soot away, her movements deliberate and full of a quiet grace he had been blind to for months. She rested her hand flat on the fuselage, the faded osprey on her wrist stark against the scorched metal, a silent communion between a creator and her creation. Ryder stood there, rooted to the concrete floor, his pride stripped away, leaving only a raw and profound humility. He had been the pilot, the viper, the tip of the spear. But he understood now. He was just a passenger. She was the soul of the machine. He watched the silent woman he had insulted, the hero hiding in plain sight, and for the first time in his life, Alex Ryder felt the true weight of awe. He had been given a lesson not in flying, but in reverence, and he knew he would spend the rest of his career trying to be worthy of it.